Today is February 24th, 2018. I'm Tom. I'm here with Tony. I think we need much stricter gun laws than we have now. A lot of people think that this is a matter of freedom, and restricting access to guns too much is taking away our freedom. But I think a lot of people have kind of been brainwashed, so to speak. We've kind of become numb to understanding what guns really are. I mean, guns are objects that kill people when you pull a trigger back a little bit. You know, they're killing tools. So why would we ever want to have freedom to access killing tools? It all seems very silly to me.
I agree with you, but what is your proposal for a difference?
We should ban a lot of these more dangerous guns, and we should make it much harder for anyone to get the safer guns.
I agree. The one thing that comes into mind, though, is the fact that it's, there is the Second Amendment. So how do we circumvent that? Like, in other words, how do we give people guns and yet prevent the mass shootings that happen? Like, guns are right, technically, yeah. Self-defense, I get that. But even one of the justices has said that the Second Amendment does not protect your right to have any kind of gun. Because you can't have, like, a fully automatic, machine gun at your house. That's against, the law. So we really need to find a way to ensure that not only do we have stricter gun laws, but at the same time, make it constitutional. And my further statement, we need to ensure that we also have socialized healthcare, because I think that's a huge thing in the process too. I mean, I think there are two things that go into gun reform: gun reform itself, but also one of the main mass shootings. In terms of like who does mass shootings, vets with PTSD. People come home from war, they're very trained in guns, but they aren't all there mentally because of the war, because of trauma. We need to ensure that they're taken care of and that they can get help.
Oh.
So,
when I talk to some people about this, we see this philosophically from a very different point of view. They think that if most people are armed, that's actually going to make us safer. The whole probability thing, that if there's 40 people in a bar and 30 of them are armed, there's going to be many more accidents, and those 30 people are going to use the guns accidentally on themselves, accidentally on each other. One of them's going to get drunk, use it on someone else. That's going to happen much more frequently than them actually stopping a killer. It's just a matter of probability and how often different events happen. That whole idea that guns make us safer, it immediately strikes me as ridiculous. I don't really know how to convince someone of that who doesn't immediately realize that it's ridiculous. It's one of those things. It's something so basic, just in terms of common sense morality and common sense safety. It seems so basic to me that if they don't already understand it at this point, I don't know what's going to make them understand.
It's true. I mean, we have people that actually think that guns in schools, like armed guards at every corner, is going to make us safer. That literally makes no point.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way: if I carry a gun for my own safety, like say I carry a gun in my apartment or in my house or even on my body all the time or much of the time, it's only a matter of time before I accidentally shoot myself or accidentally shoot one of my family members or one of my friends that I'm hanging out with. If I carry a gun for a year, or if I carry a gun for 10 years, or if I carry a gun for 30 years, the more, the more years that I carry a gun on me, the likelihood that I'm going to accidentally shoot myself or someone else increases and increases forever, the longer, infinitely, so if I carried a gun for infinitely many years, I'd be almost guaranteed to for there to be an accident. Eventually there's going to be, you can almost guarantee there's going to be an accident. That's one of the main ways I view this whole thing. It's just a matter of probability. It's when you're carrying a lethal weapon, when you're carrying a fatal killing object with you or in your house. A lot of people think that makes you safer. I think it does the opposite. It like puts you in a lion's den. It's like you wouldn't want to have a lion in your house to protect you from attackers, because the lion eventually is going to eat you or attack you just by accident.
Exactly, and also the fact is that many people, including Marines, former Marines, veterans, have all said, and they are in teaching positions right now, they have all said that having armed guards or even having armed teachers is the most ridiculous thing in the world.
I agree. There's a problem, and the problem is that the first problem is that guns exist. A lot of pro-gun people, their solution to that problem is to add more guns. So it's like they're fighting the problem with more of that same problem, but it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. Sounds like you're having a bad reaction to a drug, so you take another drug to try to make you feel better, but the second drug ends up making you feel worse in a different way, and then you try a third drug to try to fix that, and you end up taking like 27 drugs, and eventually you're either dead or you're in so much agony that you...
We're not trying to take away anyone's guns, in a sense. We're not trying to take anyone's... We're not going house by house. Republicans tend to think that. Especially, you see, a lot of transporters saying, we're not going to lose my gun. I'm like, well, no one's taking a gun away unless you're severely mentally ill or you're on a murder. You've been, you're a terrorist or something. No one's taking away your gun. If you are a good person and you don't have mental illness and you're not a risk, no one's taking away your gun. However, if you are, then maybe you shouldn't have a gun. Maybe your right to have a gun is superseded, actually, by the right for someone else to live.
Yeah, I think that even totally healthy people who currently pose no risk or threat, I think it should be significantly harder for them to acquire a gun. I think they should be legally allowed to buy a gun, but I think the requirements should be a lot harder. Like they have to complete like at least a year of specific gun safety training or something along those lines.
I think so too, and I also think that every month they should have the psychological profile test needed for them.
Yeah.
I think that, just anything, and also maybe people ask their friends or ask, hey, how's it going? Just so they don't even know that they're being tested in a sense, but get a sense of how they are mentally and, go through the process. And if they are somehow let's say one person's getting depression or suicidal, they can get some help then. Be a part of the program or the healthcare program. Also be part of hey, okay, you're sick, so let's get you help. Not just, oh, we're just going to take your gun away, good luck with that. No, let's actually get some help. There'd be a lot less mass shooting if that was the case.
They say we're Americans, we love freedom. Freedom is an American value. It's one of the things that makes America great. And I agree, I love freedom, but it's all about context. If you take the principle of freedom to an extreme where everyone has the freedom to carry a gun, everyone has the freedom to buy cocaine, to buy heroin, the principle of freedom breaks down when you take it to extreme levels like that. I think morality is about balancing these different principles. It's about balancing freedom and safety. If you take one principle too far in either direction, it becomes ridiculous. I think if cocaine was legal, I think that would be ridiculous, because using cocaine is one of the stupidest things a person could ever do in life. No one should have the freedom to do that, even if they want to. I think people are just confused about the whole concept of freedom and how to apply it. And what a lot of people do is they'll reference specific cases where a good guy with a gun saved a lot of deaths it saved a disaster because the good guy with the gun prevented, or took out the shooter. And yet those instances definitely happen. But I think if you zoom out and look at the whole picture, you see that although those instances do happen sometimes, I think much more often easy access to guns leads to these things happening in the first place. The reason the shooter had a gun in the first place is because of these overly lenient gun laws. So you don't want to fix the problem by more of the problem. You want to fix the problem by taking away the very fuel that's killing people in the first place.
And also Donald Trump wants armed teachers. I mean, okay, these teachers have enough on their plate already. They're worried about mass shootings. They're worried about the students, and they're worried also they have homework, they have this, they have that. They're probably doing other stuff to get their PhDs or masters, what I mean, like their doctors, whatever. There are other degrees in order to become, higher up into the system, become full professors, et cetera, et cetera. They don't need to practice. In fact, they don't owe society anything in practicing guns. Bonuses, forget about it. If you want to have armed teachers, then at least pay the schools more so they can have pencils, because some schools don't even have pencils anymore. Then, by actually pay separately the teachers for being armed guards on top of their teaching salary. Make it that's equaling maybe $100,000 a year for each teacher. That's $100,000, and that's not, that in some places that's a lot. In some places it's not. But guess what? You're at least paying them the salaries. Don't do bonuses. Bonuses aren't going to pay for crap. What are teachers going to do? Teachers, they're not trained as cops. Their accuracy probably is 2%, 1%. They could shoot a student by accident. And who's to stop, the teacher's life is ruined too for that mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
A lot of these pro-gun people say guns don't kill people. They say guns are not the problem. It's mentally ill people. It's hateful, evil people. A hateful, evil, or ill person, what's the worst they can do if there were no guns in the world? The worst they could do is punch someone in the face or stab someone. They'd be forced to use a less dangerous weapon. If we eliminated the most dangerous weapons in the world, the most damage they could ever do is, they'd be limited to their resources, and their resources would be, they could use knives, they could use a car, but obviously when you take guns out of the picture, these evil people, these mentally ill people, it's much harder for them to do damage. So of course it's about guns. Guns enable these mentally ill people to do much more damage than they ever could have done without guns. And I don't know how else to really put it. I don't know where the confusion arises exactly. I think it has to do with the whole freedom thing. People don't understand what freedom is, or the proper context to put the principle of freedom into. We shouldn't have freedom to do everything. Like parents, good parents don't let their kids carry a grenade around the house, or good parents don't let their 10-year-old children drink vodka whenever they want to.
It's interesting. I mean, this whole gun debate thing, it's interesting because a lot of politics has to do with it.
Yeah.
Because, look, I mean, at one point the DNC, the Democratic Party, had the majority, and they still couldn't get the gun reforms passed. Or maybe they didn't want to. Maybe it wasn't even that they couldn't. Maybe it's that they didn't want to. They weren't pressured enough. And yet, in 10 days, these high schoolers have done so much more than the DNC has all these years. It's amazing. Yeah, they're marching on, marching in Washington, protesting, talk to the NRA. What do you think about that?
I think that's definitely a good thing. The more publicity, the more awareness there is, I think, the better. That's definitely true. But, at this point, when it comes to the gun issue, I'm starting to think that maybe a different approach might be necessary. A totally peaceful, civilized approach. I'm not talking about anything violent or chaotic or anything. I'm just saying we might need to start giving different philosophical arguments that get more to the root of the philosophical confusion that a lot of people have about the whole freedom thing. You're taking away my right to hold a gun, and you're taking away my freedom to hold a gun. It's a Constitution-given freedom. I think that line of reasoning is just very divorced from reality. I think we might need to kind of, I don't know, it's not obvious to me what the best arguments are. I mean, what the most effective arguments are at this point. Because clearly, the gun debate's been going on for years in the United States, and it doesn't seem like much. Well, it certainly doesn't seem like a satisfying level of progress is being made.
So what I think is that the kids are using the fact that no one in their right mind can say that they don't know anything about violence on guns, because they've lived through this. They've lived through that, and they're leading the charge to the other high schoolers, the other survivors, to march in on the politics and say, look, you have no idea what it's like to be shot at. You have no idea. And no politician can fight back, because they can't say, oh, you're children, you don't know. Because everyone, the whole world is looking at this right now and saying, these kids know more. These kids know more about the consequence of the actions than the politicians do. And that says something.